Hey there everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we'll be looking at coordination and response 12.1, the nervous system. We'll be looking at this chapter in parts because the chapter is quite long, and let's get started. Coordination and response. Before we get started, there are some key things that we must know. A stimuli is a change in an environment. A receptor is a specialized cell that detects the stimuli, as in it detects the changes in an environment. Impulse is a message that is generated. A neuron is a specialized cell transmitting electrical impulse. Effectors are specialized cells that carry out the response. Now, this can be done using either the muscles or the glands. We'll look at that. Glands can also be effectors. For example, when you smell good food being cooked, your salivary glands may respond by secreting saliva. Hormonal glands are also effectors. Animals need fast and efficient communication system between the receptor and the effector. This is partly because most animals move in search of food. Many animals need to be able to respond very quickly to catch their food or to avoid predators. That is why nerves are the best type of communication systems. Then, most animals have two methods of sending information from receptors to effectors. The fastest is by the means of nerves, as we said. The receptor and nerves make up the animal's nervous system. Receptor and nerve. A slower method, but still a very important one, is by the means of chemical called hormones. But you don't need to really focus a lot on that. But what you really need to focus on in this is this definition of coordination is the process by which receptors detect stimuli, which generates an electrical impulse. It is then transferred to the brain or the spinal cord or the CNS. We'll look at the CNS, don't worry, through neurons where the message is processed and the respond and then responded through the effectors. Or if you need an easy definition, you can remember this big. The way in which receptors detect stimuli and pass the information on to effectors, this process is called coordination. Now, under coordination, we have two different types of system. We have the nervous system and the endocrine system. But the endocrine system will be looked at in a different video. What we'll be looking at today is the nervous system. Under the nervous system, we have central nervous system or CNS and the peripheral nervous system, the PNS. Now, the central nervous system uh, consists of the brain and the spinal cords, whereas the peripheral nervous system consists of all other nerves except the brain and the spinal cord. Now, this is how it works. The receptors detect the stimuli, pass it to the CNS or to the brain or spinal cord. This is the processor which processes it and then passes or responds using the effectors, right? Nervous system in humans. A nerve impulse is an electrical impulse that passes along nerve cells called neurons, which we looked at. Neurons are what? Specialized cells, right? Specialized cells, which means they have a specialized job. Their specialized job is what? To pass the electrical impulse, right? The role of the nervous system is to coordinate and regulate the body functions. The nervous system consists of two parts: central nervous system and peripheral nervous system, which we just looked at. Now we have three types of neurons. They are sensory neuron, relay neuron, and motor neuron. What happens is that the receptor detects stimuli, it passes it to the CNS through what? Through the sensory neuron. Now the relay neuron is in the CNS, and then from where the data, the impulse and all is processed and blah blah blah. And then when the process that needs to be carried out in response is passed through the motor neuron to the effector. Then we have types of neurons as we looked at: number one, number two, number three. Sensory neuron, this is the structure of it. This is the motor neuron and this is the relay neuron. Now what you need to know is that I've seen some common questions where they ask, where is the cell body or locate the cell bodies of each type of neuron. So you can answer in the sensory neuron, it is located in the middle on top of the axon. In the motor neuron, it is located in the cell body. Like the cell body is in surrounded by dendrites. We'll look at the structure of it, so you don't need to stress yourself. And relay neuron also surrounded by dendrites and in the center. Neurons contain the same basic parts as an animal cell. They have a nucleus, a cytoplasm, and also a cell membrane. However, their structure is specially adapted to be able to carry electrical signals very quickly. Neurons, let's change our color. Let's take orange. The longest fiber in a neuron is called an axon. Oops, let's take red. An axon can be more than a meter long. The shorter fiber are called dendrites. So you see these short fibers, right? These are called dendrites. And the axon is basically this big line, which is usually a meter long, as they said. The dendrites pick up the electrical signals from other neurons lying nearby, and these signals are called nerve impulse. So the function of these dendrites is to pick up the electrical impulse from nearby neurons. So there could be these are dendrites of other or neurons, or in fact the nerve ending, let's say like this, of another neuron where it releases nerve impulse from here. And then basically the job of the dendrite is to collect the nerve impulse from there and send it ahead. That's all. That's all. The signal passes along the cell body, then along the axon, which might pass it to another neuron. Nerve ending passes it to another neuron. Then, some of the nerve fibers of active animals, such as mammals, are wrapped in a layer of fat and protein called myelin. So sometimes they may ask you, what is myelin made up of? Basically, fat and protein, right? Write that down. Every now and then, there are narrow gaps in this myelin sheet. This is the myelin sheet on top of it. We have seen that signals that neurons transmit are in the form of electrical impulse. Myelin sheet insulates the nerve fibers so that they are able to carry these impulses much faster. For example, a myelinated nerve fiber in a cat's body can carry impulse up to 100 meters per second, and the same fiber without a myelin can carry the impulse of 5 meters per second. So you can see the difference: 100 meters per second with a myelin sheet and 5 meters per second without a myelin sheet. The difference is huge. So basically, that tells us that the myelin sheet helps us in transferring the nerve impulses much faster or much more effectively. Then we'll look at reflex. Now, what we need to look under reflex is that it is automatic and it doesn't go to the brain, the impulse. It passes through the spinal cord. Reflex action is defined as a means of automatically rapid integration and coordinating stimuli with the response of effectors. Response arc, it's the pathway where nerve impulse is transported from receptors to effectors. Basically, what it's saying is that, okay, this is the reflex arc. We have our receptor here. We have a neuron that takes it to the CNS or the spinal cord and the brain. And the neuron that does this is sensory neuron. Now we know that the relay neuron is in the CNS. The CNS consists of spinal cord and brain. The impulse is processed over here and then it's sent to the effector to be responded to through the motor neuron. That's all it says. So if they ask you, how does the impulse travel through neuron? What is their like structure or whatever? You can say it first travels to the sensory neuron, goes to the CNS where the relay neuron is. From the relay neuron, it goes to the motor neuron where it's passed on to the effector. So then we have synapses or synapses, as many people say it. It's the junction between two neurons, basically this, right? Synaptic cleft, a gap between each pair of neuron. Inside the axon, so this is inside the axon, there are hundreds of tiny vesicles, each containing a chemical called neurotransmitter. Synapses act like a one-way valve. There's only neurotransmitter on one side of the synapse so that impulse can go across from that side. Synapses ensure that nerve impulse travel in only one direction. Blah 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 blah. What it's saying is that when the impulse, which is an electrical impulse, comes at the beginning of comes at the beginning of the neuron, it is converted from an electrical impulse to a chemical called the neurotransmitter. Now the neurotransmitter are then put in a molecule and then brought very fast to the end of the neuron, from where they are transferred to a different neuron, and then this is the receptor protein that helps in moving it from here to here. Now, one thing we must know is that this shape must be complementary to this shape. And another thing we must know is that these two never touch. Okay, that is that. When an electrical impulse arrives along the axon of the sensory neuron, it causes these vesicles to move to the cell membrane of the sensory neuron. They fuse with the membrane and empty their contents, that is the neurotransmitter molecules, into the synaptic cleft. Synaptic cleft. The neurotransmitters quickly diffuse across the gap. Why do they diffuse? They have a lower concentration here. Sorry. They have a higher concentration here and a lower concentration here. As you can see, higher concentration. Very few of them over here. That's why, due to the concentration gradient, it goes down the concentration gradient and diffuses across, right? The molecules of neurotransmitter are attached to protein receptors. Declare this. These are the protein receptors in the cell membrane of the relay neuron or the next neuron. Then this happens because the shape of the neurotransmitter molecules is complementary to the shape of the receptor protein. This shape, this circular shape, fits in this shape of this protein, a receptor protein. They must be complementary and they must fit in itself. The binding of the neurotransmitter with the receptor triggers an electrical impulse in the relay neuron. So as soon as it gets here, from an electrical neuron, it changes to a chemical and quickly transports to the other neuron. The impulse sweeps along the relay neurons until it reaches the next synapse. The same process repeats until it reaches the CNS or any part. And that's all. Thank you. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment. I don't know why you guys don't comment. Make sure you comment on this one. Till then, see you in the next video.